Kerem is a young, successful interior decorator, and he is currently in the house of a client. He has just finished a massive decor project and is eagerly waiting for the client to arrive and survey the work. The client, a middle-aged woman, is accompanied by her friend who had introduced Kerem to her. As they walk into the house, they are pleasantly surprised at how wonderfully well the finishing work is. They are impressed and express their gratitude to Kerem. They love the radiance of the decorations. Kerem presents his signature gift, a flower, to the client. He explains that he presents one of these gifts to all the homes he decorates. He also explains that the flower is difficult to take care of and make it bloom. One little mistake could cause it to die off. He uses this to teach the essence of life. This scene takes place at Kerem's house. His wife Yesim has just returned from Dr. Eda's office, who is responsible for their reproductive treatment. She looks unhappy because the pregnancy test they had recently done came back negative. Yesim is sitting on the floor of their expansive apartment, feeling sad and waiting for Kerem's return. The couple has been facing infertility issues for several years. Kerem arrives home from work carrying a bag filled with groceries and vegetables for making dinner. He calls out to his wife excitedly as soon as he enters the house. When his wife doesn't respond, he immediately knows that something might have gone wrong during the doctor's visit. He approaches her and sits beside her, trying to cheer her up and uplift the mood. He suggests they should have dinner at a restaurant instead of cooking at home. His wife expresses her gratitude towards his thoughtfulness and gives him a big hug. They are now at the restaurant, and he observes her as she picks at her food. He can tell that her heart is heavy, knowing that she is still unable to conceive. He asks her why she seems so upset, despite both of them actively undergoing treatment. In response, she shares with him that she is extremely sad because they both desperately want a child, and it seems unfair that many women who cannot take care of a child and do not desire one easily fall pregnant. He tries to console Yesim by telling her that life is not always fair and she shouldn't be too upset. However, his wife responds by pointing out that he wants to have children even more than she does, yet he appears more rational and calm about it. She wonders why he isn't worried. He said they both will make a list of their life changes the next day. They both visit the doctor today, who prescribes for Yesim. Her current dosage is doubled to enable her to be receptive for conception. He is walking with his wife by the side of the street, and she is still unhappy, so Kerem tries to cheer Yesim up by promising to take her any place of her choosing. Some weeks later, the young couple think that a change of environment will do them a lot of good, especially for his wife Yesim, who has been having it tough. Kerem calls Dervis, his brother, to tell him that they are both traveling to stay with them for a couple of days. Dervis is excited by this and promises to make a good meal when they arrive. Today, they are preparing to travel. Yesim takes a camera to capture nature en route. As they drive, they pass large herds of sheep, and she asks Kerem to slow down so she can capture them with her camera. She waves at the shepherd after taking photos. As they drive past the village market, fresh tomatoes sold at the market catch her sight. He stops and they go over to bargain. A group of young boys are lying flat on their stomachs, using a mound of sand as their make-believe battleground. They pretend to be soldiers in a war, pointing their imaginary guns and mimicking shooting sounds. Suddenly, they spot a woman by the nearby bushes and decide to throw stones at her. As they do this, the woman's son notices them and chases after them, causing the boys to run away in fear. Yesim and her husband have bought some fresh tomatoes and are continuing their journey. Yesim suddenly expresses her craving for tomatoes and unbuckles her seatbelt to reach for them in the back seat. However, before she can grab them, the group of boys being chased run into Kerem's car, causing it to flip over due to the speed of the collision. His wife and a young boy pass away in the accident. Kerem has a flashback of himself and his Yesim, remembering the journey they went through together, the joy and laughter they both share. Suddenly, he is brought into a conscious state by the sound of someone calling his name. He wakes up abruptly and looks around. He realizes he is alone in a hospital room. His head hurts. As he recalls the accident that caused the death of his wife, he begins to cry. He hears footsteps outside his door. Kerem pulls himself out of bed and opens the door, stepping into the hospital corridor. He could feel his head banging. Suddenly, he sees a young boy running past him. Then, he hears a voice whispering, behind his ears, urging him to be quiet. He calls out loudly to see if anyone is close, but it's quiet. He looks around. He sees a man standing with his back to him. Kerem walks towards the man and touches him, causing this person to turn around. The man's face looks alien and his mouth is stitched shut. The scary being brings his finger across his lips, signaling for Kerem to be silent. This makes Kerem scream loudly and ask it to go away. Just then, a nurse comes to pull him away, saying that the medication is messing with his head. Kerem is sure of what he has seen. Before he enters his room, he catches sight of two figures holding hands and looking at him. The next morning, a police officer is by Kerem's bedside, asking him to recount the incident as it occurred. Kerem explains their trip from Istanbul to Assos and how everything happened in a split second. Afterward, Kerem is arraigned in court. He recounts everything that happened, and several witnesses are called to testify. After hearing from both sides, the judge acquits him, stating that he was driving at the correct speed level and the boy ran into him. The mother of the deceased boy is seen cursing him and calling him a murderer. He spends 2 months with his mom, who is by his side, comforting him. He asks his mom to go back home as she has done her best and he is set to adapt to his new reality. At first, his mom is hesitant to leave him by himself. She also tells him to cry out if he feels like it and to do his best to heal. She also commends his friend and work partner Yages, who's always been around him, caring for him. The first night of being alone, it's raining outside and he's watching a slideshow of pictures of himself. And yes, when he notices strange things happening. First, there is lightning, then his room light goes off and on. He is beginning to get uneasy. When the music he used to share with his wife comes on, he is scared but doesn't show it. His mind is playing tricks on him, he reasons. Kerem puts off the light and tries to catch some sleep when he begins to feel a presence in the room. As he drifts into deep sleep, he feels something crawling from his feet to his belly, then he feels it on his face. As he opens his eyes, he sees the face of a scary-looking boy whose eyes look blank with a gray smile. Then, the creature begins holding his legs. He kicks it off and runs to the door. The scary boy's spirit follows him by jumping on all fours with evil laughter. He runs to the door and tries to open it. Soon, it opens and he falls into Yages, his friend who is about to enter his house. Yages is surprised to see his friend sweating and panting. He asks him what the matter is and why he is trying to run out. He says he knows he's grieving, but he should try to have some fun. Yages asks to take him out for a movie date and some beer. He tells his friend that he feels like he's being followed. Yages responds to him, saying he doesn't believe in spiritual things, and that it's probably his mind or medication contorting his reality. Kerem says he's finding it hard to move on. He cannot forget his wife, and the pain is overwhelming. He wishes he could wipe this painful memory from his head. Yages is reminding him of the promise they made to each other years ago. They promised that before life overwhelmed them, they would visit their grandfather's homeland. They were going to swim in the river of Dubrovnik, with nothing but a backpack and camera. Yages says he knows Kerem would back out, but he still talks about how life was tough for them years back. But now they are persistent and successful, traveling the world as professional decorators. He encourages Kerem that the dream is still valid and they could still go to Dubrovnik right now. However, Kerem says he isn't strong enough for the trip. Kerem wakes up the next morning to the sound of someone doing dishes. He strolls to the kitchen to see Yages, with his back facing him, washing the dishes. He goes to the fridge to pick a drink, but he notices that Yages isn't responding to any of the conversation. As he turns, he sees a pair of strange-looking, corpse-like feet poking out from Yages's trousers. He screams, and Yages runs to meet him, asking him what the matter is. Kerem is surprised to see his friend because he thought he was over at the sink washing the dishes. Yages says he wasn't the one doing the dishes. Yages advises him to stop beating himself up over and over again. He tells him that the accident wasn't his fault. The boy ran into his moving vehicle. As they speak, they both hear the noise of shattering glass and loud music playing in the background. Kerem packs up his things and sets off to travel to his brother Dervis's house the next day. He can't make sense of the things he's seeing or feeling in his own apartment, and nobody, even his best friend Yages, seems to understand him. Kerem thinks a change of environment would be good for his mental and physical health. After a few hours of being driven, he arrives at his brother's house, who is very much delighted to host him. They feel sad over the misfortune he has experienced. Kerem is being served a hearty breakfast by Dervis's wife Nergis. While eating, Dervis and his wife come to sit with him at the dining table. He asks after Atakan's family, the boy who ran into his car and died. He is told that the mother is doing better. She is still mourning, but she's better. His brother says that life and fate happened and it isn't his fault the boy died. Dervis's wife also adds that while alive, the boy was a troublemaker who caused trouble with his classmates. She asks for God's forgiveness and adds that the boy was headed for a bad end. Kerem informs them that he will pay them the blood money, explaining that it is any amount paid to the deceased family for causing their death. Dervis asks him to take a walk with him in the garden, and as soon as they are alone, he asks Kerem why he came up with the suggestion to pay the family when he has won the court case. He says that once Kerem gives the money, Kudret, the deceased father, will want and demand more. Kerem insists, saying that he knows money won't stop anything, but he feels guilty. He adds that something has been following him and he hopes it leaves him. Dervis is shocked to hear this. Kerem turns and begins to walk away, asking him not to think of him as someone who is going insane. He narrates that for a while now, he sees the ghost of the deceased boy following him anywhere he goes, taking different forms. He isn't dreaming because he sees it physically. He says the boy follows him from the hospital to his house and he hopes the ghost isn't here with them, listening to them. He claims the ghost won't leave him alone. It wants revenge. A while later, Dervis tells him that he believes him in all he narrates. He says that there are other realms not visible to physical eyes. Dervis and his wife prepare to go see Kudret, the deceased father. Nergis pulls out an amulet and gives it to him as a protection against evil eyes. As she does so, she urges him to always pray in his head and not out loud. This scene shows Kerem deeply asleep. As he opens his eyes, he sees an ugly alien-looking creature on him, which is growing bigger and scarier. Its eyes are pitch black, and its face is dusty gray. It sticks out its huge black tongue and licks its lips. Karam wakes up, looking around. He can't see anything and mutters under his breath that he's dreaming again. As he stands up from the bed, he has a strong instinct that something is around, watching his every move. The hairs on his skin are up, and he can smell the scent of evil. Since he is alone, he decides to keep himself busy by doing chores, doing laundry, and scrubbing himself of the bad aura he has been exposed to. Soon, Dervis's wife arrives and sees him sitting in a corner. He merely acknowledges her presence, and she goes over to touch his skin, which is burning. She advises him to take a shower to cool off. He just mutters that the creature has followed him to this apartment. There is no hiding or running from it. The next morning, Dervis and his wife sit and discuss Karam and his strange behavior. His wife tells him that Karam is gradually losing his mind. He has refused to eat and is just staring at the ground. She advises that they take him to Granny Zissin before he deteriorates further. Dervis suggests that they discuss it with him first. As they are both speaking, Karam walks in, greets them, and joins them at the dining table. Dervis's wife goes to the kitchen to prepare scrambled eggs and cheese for him. Karam inquires how the meeting with Kudrat went yesterday. Dervis assures him that they met at a middle ground and he has taken care of him as requested. Karam is relieved and filled with gratitude. Dervis says he advised him to use the money to buy a trunk for food delivery so he could cater to his family. Karam asked if they could visit the deceased's grave. They all go to the deceased's grave. Karam speaks to the grave and asks what the boy wants from him. Dervis pulls him up and asks him to stop speaking to the grave, saying that it's sinful. Karam becomes aggressive and retorts that the deceased ghost is tormenting and stalking him. Dervis insists they leave and stop creating a scene. As they drive back home, Dervis tells him about a village up the mountain called Kakmekler. Over 20 houses are there, but almost everyone has left. They left for Nurga's village, where an old woman named Granny Zissin resides. The woman became blind at a young age, and soon she started seeing things that normal people don't see. They often visit Granny Zissin, attesting to her face and palms possessing healing powers, and believing that she may have a solution to his problems. They ask him to get ready so they can go visit her. The air there could do him some good. As they drive, Dervis tells him that people do not like Granny. They perceive her as someone who is possessed by an evil spirit, but they still seek her help for spiritual solutions. As they arrive at Granny Zissin's house, they notice how deserted the village is. Dervis begins to scream out her name and her young son Omer comes running towards them to say hi. He informs them that Granny is waiting for them inside. As soon as they enter, Karam sees the old woman stretching forth her hands and calling him. As he comes closer, he sees the white film over her eyes, for she truly cannot see. She uses her hands to trace the structure of his face. As soon as her hands touch him, he begins to weep as she comforts him. Soon, they hear the dog barking and she asks what followed him here. The creature is here, she could feel it. During dinner the next day, Nurgiz announces to them that Granny says she can chase the evil creature that is following Karam, but she will only do so on one condition. Even without hearing the condition, he agrees to it. She explains that the creature comes from the other side, out of the dark place. She also reveals that there is another person that made him commit a sin, which opened a door that should never have been opened. The boy haunts him and seeks revenge, but he can't enter the house as he fears her and everything that pertains to her. She says she can see it, but it only appears to him when it wants to frighten him. If Karam sees it every time, he wouldn't be frightened. She claims it feeds on his fears and grows bigger every time Karam is frightened. She urges him to not be afraid. She says she knows what it wants revenge, but not in this world. It wants it in the afterlife. This creature can't kill him as it can't make Karam join him. Because it dwells in hell, it intends to drive him crazy, to make him sin by killing and his family. Then, it can join him in hell and make him suffer. As they sleep, they all wake up by the ground trembling. Nurgiz screams and says it's an earthquake, then Granny admonishes them to be silent. She stares blankly and as she listens instantly she points to the ceiling. Just then, the long reptilian hand of the giant monster is seen by the window as it slowly reveals its scary face. She speaks directly to the creature that Karam isn't the cause of the boy's demise. She explains that the boy had jumped into the moving vehicle. As she speaks, it is revealed to her that the deceased boy was not the one after Karam. It was another man he killed named Bakir. Few minutes after the incident, they are astonished to hear that Karam had killed someone in the past. Dervis persuades him to tell everyone what had happened. Karam says he will not do it in front of young Omer as it's a long story that they may not understand. While Omer sleeps, he shares the story. He flashes back to many years ago when he and his family lived in Emergan. His dad had just passed away, and he and his mother were trying to move on. He has a best friend called Tainer, and they both reside in the same building. They are hanging out one day when he sees the bastard Bakir, who had moved to the neighborhood earlier. Baker's head is always down, he never talks to anyone, and he stays in his shadow. Bakir is in trouble with the law, but nothing has been proven as there was no evidence, and there are a lot of charges against him. That's the reason why he moves from one neighborhood to another to avoid detection. Baker is a deviant to the core, he can't help his nature, and he is always after Tainer. One day in autumn, Tainer goes missing, and everyone is looking for him, but Karam knows Bakir must have done something to him. The police question him but don't find anything suspicious. However, something happens at the family dinner when a young girl named Icicle reveals that there is an abandoned house behind their house where nobody ever enters. She claims to have seen Backer leaving there while wearing a face mask, but she could recognize him. That night, he walks into the abandoned building and finds Tanner dead. He is certain Backer killed him. He is filled with rage and picks up a hammer from the house. Nobody knows what he is doing and nobody finds out. He made his way to Backer's apartment. All he remembers is a hot night and seeing him sleeping. He uses the hammer to hit his head until he dies. He leaves the room with Backer splattered all over him. He washes himself in his sink. Nobody suspects him of such a heinous act. After narrating the story, Karam feels relieved of a heavy burden. Dervis approaches him and affirms that Karam acted in accordance with his own sense of justice, and that he must learn to accept it. While they converse, Karam's phone rings, and Omer delivers it to him. It is his friend Yajuz on the other end, asking where he is because he has been unable to reach him and has grown concerned. Karam assures him that he is okay, undergoing a period of purification in a village. He requests that Yajuz not worry about him and that he will be okay soon. However, Yajuz suspects that Karam has lost his mind and insists on coming over to pick him up. While in the house, Nergis calls Dervis' attention to the requirement needed for the cleansing ritual on Karam. Granny has informed her that he needs to be left alone and chained outside since the creatures can't come into the house and Karam needs to be outside to bait them. As they are all seated in the afternoon of the same day having lunch, Granny says she was told the reason why the deceased boy still follows Karam, because he misses his mom and wants to be with her. He opened a door after his death. He shouldn't have, and now he is lost in darkness. Backer sees the open door and rushes out. He follows the boy to find Karam. Even the deceased boy is scared of Backer. If it's God's will, Karam will be free soon, she announces. Nergis prepares the herbs as a tea for Karam and brings it to him while he is seated with Omer. As Karam sips from the tea, he begins to feel dizzy. Little does he know, the tea is actually a sedative. Dervis goes over to where Karam is and helps him into his bed. Despite feeling deeply sleepy, Karam manages to stay awake and asks Dervis if he's truly a bad person and deserves all that is happening to him. Then he falls into a deep sleep. Karam awakens to the gentle breeze and sun rays. As he opens his eyes, he is shocked to see himself chained in the middle of the compound. He blinks his eyes, he reasons he's having a nightmare as usual. But when he sees Dervis standing before him, he realizes he is chained up for real. Dervis brings out the key from his pocket and dangles it before him before going to sit at a far distance. Meanwhile, Yajuz is worried over Karam. Knowing Karam isn't in the right frame of mind, and not hearing from him is making him really scared. He goes to see him at Dervis's house, but no one is home, and he has been trying to reach him to no avail. Karam is angry at Dervis. He asks him if he is chained up because he confessed to killing Backer. Dervis affirms it and says that he only told him what he wanted to hear. He reiterates Karam is chained up because he is a murderer. Karam pleads with Dervis to tell him what is happening. Dervis says that Granny went into a vision and revealed that if they offered Karam to the demon, their lives would be spared. If not, the demon would kill them all. Dervis is telling Karam that he will be left in the dark because the Backer-possessed creature loves the dark. Karam feels scared as it is starting to get dark. He looks around for a way to break off the chain by pulling himself, dragging the chain on his feet, and trying to find a tool to break himself free. He spots a hammer nearby and crawls towards it to pick it up. Yajuz is recalling how Karam told him that he is currently in the village with Dervis for spiritual cleansing. He decides to go to Dervis's house and asks the neighbor for directions to the village. The neighbor gives him the necessary information and Yajuz sets off in his car towards the village. As night falls, everywhere is quiet. Karam attempts to break the chain that binds him, but he can't seem to free himself. Dervis brings him dinner, telling him to eat as if it were his last meal. While Karam is eating, the dog starts barking and he hears a loud, demonic scream. He shivers in fear. As soon as Granny hears the dog barking, she commands to be taken to Karam. The time has come to face the creature and sever him from Karam permanently. She picks up her ritual drum and wears her red undergarment. She calls on her guardians to hold her hands. She tells Dervis and Nergis that in the process of cleansing, her soul will depart but her flesh will remain. She warns them not to interfere. Karam sees the creature running towards him and he calls out for Granny in fear. The creature looks like a demonic figure in an animal form with long thin limbs and a hunchback. As it comes closer, it grows bigger and scarier. It approaches Karam and lifts him up with its hand. Karam, in anger, begins to hit it with his hammer continuously. His fear turns to anger as he hits it, remembering his late friend Tanner. Then, Granny comes out hitting her ritual drum. As she hits the drum, 2 round balls of game appear and she sends them towards the beast. Granny falls into a trance where she sees herself inside the beast confronting him. She releases the soul of the he has harmed inside of him, allowing them to be free. The beast falls and disintegrates into particles. Karam is indeed free but weak. Just then, Yajuz runs into the compound. Months later, Karam is free. He goes to his late wife's grave to speak to her. He misses her and tells her how he has adopted Omer, Granny's son, after her death as that was her last request. He is now happy, always going to visit his wife's grave.